Meeting to order. Good morning to everybody
Good
to this
morning.
weekly meeting of Rotary Club of Riverside. First, we rise for national anthem. Rohit, I would request now straightway to introduce the speakers of the day and take this meeting forward.
Thank you, Umesh. Good morning, everybody. S. Giridhar and Vijay Raghunathan are colleagues at the Azim Premji Foundation, Bengaluru. There is a friendship that began in 1984 when they worked at Carborundum Universal Factory at Chennai and played city cricket tournaments together. Raghunath was a left-handed batter and a fearless close catcher who rubbed shoulders with some of India's best cricketers of the 60s and 70s in the first division leagues of Chennai and Mumbai. Giridhar bowled leg spin and was also an agile close catcher, though he did not play at that same level. Apart from Mid-wicket Tales, they also jointly written From Mumbai to Durban, India's Greatest Test. Giridhar has also done a detailed study of government school teachers for a very moving and inspiring book, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Teachers, the Heroes of Real India. Incidentally, I had also launched this book earlier, a few years back, the same book. Friends, now I present to you Giridhar and Raghunath. They will start the flow and then I'll shoot questions to them. Giridhar, you're on.
Thank you very much, Rohitji. Pleasure for me and Raghunath to be on today morning's meeting where you have very kindly agreed to host a session around cricket and our book. I was very delighted to hear Rohit mention the teacher's book, which is very close to my heart. And I remember a few years ago, I think 2020, when that book came out. Today's topic is, of course, Mid-wicket Tales, a century and more of cricket. Published by Speaking Tiger Books. Very kind of them to publish a new revised edition. Before I hand over to Raghunath, just a few words. Raghu and I started writing cricket blogs about 17 years ago, 16 years ago. And around 2012-13, when we had written a fair number of essays on cricket, Sage Publications came forward and said they would like to make a book of this. And that is how the first edition of Mid-wicket Tales happened in 2014. We were very fortunate that that book got very generous reviews, not only from reading public, but also from discerning reviewers as well as cricketers. Last year, when Sage Publications decided to wind down their book publication business in India, we were wondering what will happen to Mid-wicket Tales, at which time Speaking Tiger Books came forward and we agreed to do a revised edition. So the new book that we are talking about today is actually contains all the essays that were there in the first edition, plus 7 more hopefully very interesting essays that sit well with the existing essays, and a fairly large sweeping panoramic concluding essay where we look at cricket in the last 10 years and everything around. The genre of our book has been what we hope is an interesting mix of covering every aspect and facet of this wonderful game objectively and with love, covering technical analysis, data, anecdotes, stories, and placing them together in a manner that readers can enjoy any essay at any time. And it's meant for cricket lovers. We, as cricket lovers, bring this book as a gift for all other cricket lovers across the world, not just India. So, with those few words about the background of this new edition of Mid-wicket Tales, I hand over to Raghu to comment and add whatever he wants to in these opening remarks.
Since morning to all of you, very, very nice of you to have us on this Rotary meeting of yours. I wanted to start with some old connections with Pune and Bombay. So my first job way back in 1969, I was a chemical engineer from Madras, as it was called then. And I worked with the Lambretta Scooter Company from 69 to 74, Automobile Products of India, Bandu in Bombay. And later, when I worked with Carborundum Universal, about which Giri has already talked, that's where we met. I made a number of trips to Pune from Bombay, and that was to do with work with Kirloskar Cummins and Tatas and SKF and everybody else who used abrasive wheels. Cricket-wise, I played my 5 years of cricket in Bombay, and since you're all from the Western Zone, I'd like to mention some of the top cricketers who were playing in First Division then, and I had the great opportunity to play with them. Though they were slightly past their best, there were people like Polly Umriga, Vijay Manjrekar, Salim Durani, Dilip Sardesai, Ramakant Desai, and a whole host of them. Sunil Gavaskar was just making his appearance. So I have played with a whole lot of those people in Bombay and enjoyed the cricket in Bombay and the visits to Pune immensely. Just to add a little more about this book, Mid-wicket Tales, Giri and I have been voracious readers of everything that was printed in those days. So starting with crime fiction and going through P.G. Wodehouse, we kind of, went through everything. It was a broad spectrum of reading English books. And while doing those, we savored everything that was written about cricket. And then watched matches and played quite a lot of cricket. So this book, Mid-wicket Tales, has a chapter, as Giri said, on almost every facet of the game. There's one chapter, we start closing catching, because we were both very, very thrilled about, fielding at slip or gully or short leg. Then there are chapters about the LBW, fast bowlers, left arm fast bowlers, right arm fast bowlers, left hand batsmen, opening batsmen, wicket keepers. So you name it. There's a chapter on almost every facet of the game. And we have largely been great fans of Test cricket, because you must understand that most of us from those days, I was born in 1946 and Giri is 10 years older, born in 1956. So you can imagine all that we had for the first 30 years of our life was not the white ball cricket, but the red ball cricket. And so a lot of this book was about Test cricket, but it is not about Test cricket from an Indian point of view. It is Test cricket from all over the world. Test cricket started in 1877. And so we've covered almost 150 years of cricket. The first edition came out in 2011. 2014. So we've covered about 150 years of Test cricket. Cricket in Australia, England, South Africa, New Zealand, West Indies, Pakistan, and India. Everything. And that's something that I wanted to give you as a broad background. And what we have added, the 7 chapters in this new edition, there is one chapter on the last 10 years after our first division was published. And we've talked about some of the changes that the instant cricket has brought about, even in test cricket. The 50-over game and especially the 20-over game, the T20 cricket, has changed test cricket also. Test cricket used to be slow and considered rather boring for people who were not terribly into the game. People were scoring 250 runs a day. Right now, I think things have changed. Most test matches have a decision. They are not drawn. And most of the games have 300 to 400 runs scored in a day. So it's changed a lot and changed for the better. And cricket is a lot more entertaining and attacking just now. That's what I wanted to say at the start. Anything else, Giri?
I'll wait for Rohit to probe us with the next one. Then I'll add.
There are many great captains in the cricket history. Can you tell us about the assessment of from your point of view of Indian captains over the years?
Again, I'll begin and Raghu will take over. Raghu should tell us stories of Vasu Parajpe's captaincy from Bombay. But I'll begin with, the usual stories of our greatest captains start from, let us say, when Pataudi changed the whole way we played cricket in the 60s. Wadekar bringing us those first victories as a very practical, pragmatic, shrewd captain to take over from Pataudi, who was so charismatic. But I think the unforgettable 1983 Kapil Dev victory, etc. So those are all events where you remember the captains. Or, for example, the era when Ganguly took over after the match fixing scandals and things like that and built a beautiful team. If I look at the Indian captaincy, I think for the first time in the last 23 years, we have had a very smooth and nice sequence of good captains. We may say plus minus. There is no fun in saying who is the best captain. I think overall, if you look at it, each one of them was a very, very good successor and proud carrier of the tradition. So Ganguly, followed by Dravid, followed by Kumble, was superb, followed by Dhoni, of course. And then you had Kohli leading India through the last 7 years before Rohit took over. So I think each of us will have pluses and minuses. For example, some of us believe Ganguly at the crucial time, therefore Ganguly the most significant, impactful captain. Somebody will talk of Dhoni's contribution, especially in one-day cricket, and so on and so forth. But at this stage, before I give way to Raghu, I want to say that we have devoted a chapter to captaincy in this book also. There are in fact two chapters in our book, Mid-wicket Tales on captaincy. One looks at overall historic captaincy. It starts from early days, covering people like Benno, Worrell, and so on. And the title of the chapter, in fact, has Brierley on the title. Brierley and Worrell, whom we consider very highly among his captains in the history of the game. And then we have another chapter which we wrote before 2023 World Cup. The book is written before the 2023 World Cup, where we have covered all the great World Cup impacting captains since 1975, starting from Lloyd in 1975 down to Owen Morgan and others in 2019. So I think those two chapters together will give you a sense of what we think of captaincy. Permit me to close my section with who I think were two of the best captains who could not captain India. According to me, M.L. Jayasinghe was the best captain India never had. M.L. Jayasinghe of Hyderabad and South Zone. Had the fortune of seeing him play, had the fortune as a schoolboy cricketer to talk to him also. And I think he was a wonderful lieutenant in terms of strategy and tactics for both Pataudi and Wadekar. And we won. Of course, there was no chance, but he was a wonderful, wonderful captain. Similarly, I think from the West, one can never forget Ashok Mankad. And Ashok Mankad was a very shrewd captain. So I think just to give you two names, because very often in cricket, we get stuck with test cricket. There are wonderful people who did not play Test cricket and yet were great cricketers. And there were wonderful Test cricketers who were great captains but could not captain their country. I think currently, for example, Ashwin would make a great captain, but one wonders whether he'll ever captain India. Over to Raghu.
Being the older of the two, I also wanted to talk about some extremely bad precedents we've had in India of captaincy in cricket. Most of you will know that we started playing Test cricket in 1932. Our first test against England was in 1932 when we were not yet independent. And so a lot of influence from our colonial rulers, and cricket in India in the early days was patronized largely by the royalty. So the Maharajas had a lot of say. And one of the earliest captains, who was almost the worst captain that one can ever imagine, was the Maharaj Kumar of Visayanagara, Vizzy as he was called, who later turned out to be one of the worst commentators we've ever had. So starting with Vizzy, we had, not very good captains. The first good captain of India was perhaps Lala Amarnath. Lala Amarnath was a very good captain. And in 1952 against Pakistan, when Pakistan started playing Test cricket, their first series when they came here, when we beat them 2-1, Lala Amarnath was the captain. He was the first good captain. And moving from Test captaincy to other captains like Jaisimha and, Giri talked about a couple of names. I would like to take it one step below and talk about someone who I admired greatly in Bombay in league cricket. He was a state cricketer called Vasu Paranjpe. Yeah. Vasu Paranjpe captained Dadar Union. And that's the team that had Sunil Gavaskar and Veng Sarkar and all those great players. And Vasu was an absolutely brilliant captain, a tactician, a strategist. And our own captain, my club was captained by one Mr. Satyamurthy, and who died just a year ago. And he was a great captain as well. These are captains who were charismatic, who had enough credibility to get total loyalty from all their teammates. And they made, not very orthodox, but sometimes very creative decisions. We've talked about some of those captaincy, innovative, creative things that captains have done in World Cup cricket in that chapter that Giri mentioned. So we've had captains, and my own choice of the best ever captain India has had Test cricket is easily Sourav Ganguly. Because he came after a very, very tough period when there was match fixing, Nazaruddin went out, and cricket was in the doldrums. And the way Ganguly brought the team together and backed some of the players like Yuvraj and Harbhajan Singh and got us clicking and played some of the best matches away from India, I would rate Ganguly perhaps a notch above Dhoni and a few others as a Test cricket captain, to answer your question. Yeah.
You talk about Bishan Singh Bedi, the man with a lion heart. Can you say more about Bishan Singh Bedi and association with him?
Yes, both of us have had some association with him. Bishan Singh Bedi, the man. When we wrote this book, Mid-wicket Tales, the first edition in 2014, very soon somebody sent in the book. Neither of us knew Bedi. Someone, maybe Giri will be able to tell you a little later, who exactly sent him the book. And it was amazing. Bishan Singh Bedi, from someone, got my number and he called and said, I don't know who you are, but you and your friend have written possibly the best book on cricket written by any Indian. It was high praise indeed from someone who knew cricket. And when I went next time to Delhi, I made it a point to call him and had a great evening dinner and a drink with him at the Delhi Golf Club. Bedi was all heart, And what I loved about him was how frank and how, he had no diplomacy when it came to cricket. He said what he felt. There was no filter. And he was an amazingly nice man. And soon after, when there was floods in Chennai, he called Giridhar and asked him, are Raghunath and Venkataraghavan okay in Chennai? I believe there are a lot of floods. And, he was a, Giri can tell you a little more about him. He also had a great evening with him. But what I admired tremendously about Bedi was also his action when they named the Ferozshah Kotla ground after a politician a few years ago. Bedi gave up his membership of the Delhi Cricket Association, saying cricket grounds should not be named after politicians. It must be named after great cricketers. So I am resigning because I don't like what's happening. That's Vishen Bedi for you. We all miss him tremendously. Yes, Giri.
I'll talk of the cricketing aspect. So Bedi, when he talked to us after reading Mid-wicket Tales, he phoned and while praising the book, he told me, Giri, lekin yaar, you guys are the same. I said, why, Vishenpa? What's the matter? He said, when you see that a bowler is having a bad action or a dubious action or a suspect action, why don't you say it clearly? He was obviously talking of a couple of off-spinners about whom we had written gently, saying that their actions are not great and things like that. He said, yaar, hathoda maar. So he was that kind of a person. One thing I'm very proud about in the book, and which Vishen also liked, is when we talked of off-spin bowling and Dusra, and we hate the Dusra, by the way. And we are very glad that the Dusra is out of the cricket game now. We had written that by the very nature of its action, a leg spinner can never chuck. Because as a leg spinner, I can tell you, as I grew up, I started bowling leg spin and I realized that both at the time of delivery and the way the arm goes around, it's impossible almost to chuck while bowling leg spin. With an off spin, whether you like it or not, if you're not careful, you can develop a suspect action. So the concluding line of our chapter was that by the very nature of its bowling, leg spin cannot be chucked, whereas off spinners must be very careful. That was the end of it. But later on, I realized with great joy that Vishen Bedi would make many of his young students begin their bowling with leg spin, saying that agar aapne leg spin se shuru kiya, later on when you want to bowl off spin, you will have already got enough muscle memory not to chuck. So that was something that was very interesting, that what we mentioned, having played at least my level of cricket, for Vishen to also endorse it in his own way with his, I thought that was a lovely thing. Simply speaking, the title of that chapter tells you all. A man of very large heart, high principles, calls a spade a shovel, and when he tells a story, you can bet that that story is 120% of the story, not 99% of the story.
You knew Salim Durani well. He was I also adored him a lot. Can you give some thoughts on Salim Durani?
I'll begin and hand over to Raghu. Raghu's played and fielded at covers to one of his brilliant innings and all that in Bombay. But I'll begin because there is a special place that Durani has in our hearts. The first ever blog that we wrote that finally became Mid-wicket Tales was because of Salim Durani. I was traveling to Uttarakhand on Azim Premji Foundation work with my colleague, and we had stopped at an airport and we were early for our flight when we ran into Salim Durani at the lounge. And my friend, who was not following cricket very closely, thought he's a film star. Even at that age, he was that tall and handsome and good looking, Durani. So I said, no, that is Salim Durani, because I knew my cricketers and cricket. The way I spoke, it reached Salim's ears. And the way he turned and smiled at the recognition was almost brilliant. It was brilliant. So then the next step was very natural, shaking hands, saying, Chaliye, baatcheet karte hain. And over the next 1 hour, we had a lovely conversation. I quickly put down that conversation in the form of an essay. And that essay went and got published in ESPN Cricinfo. And from there to the next and next that Raghu wrote, along with me, soon we had Mid-wicket Tales. So actually the first ever essay we wrote was thanks to Salim Durani. Now actually all of us adored him as a player, right? In that conversation, I could make out that Durani was he's a very modest man, okay? A very modest man, more particular about other people than himself. So when I told him that Raghu's seen him play or played with him and he's a left-hander, he started talking to me about Raghu's batting. And I had to tell him about Raghu's batting because I played with Raghu also. But as the conversation went on, you could make out that Durani was perhaps a bit sad that he had not utilized his full potential as a batsman. He felt he had utilized his potential as a bowler. The way he described his bowling was superb, confident, telling what he could do, what he could not do. But I could make out a tinge of sadness when he spoke about his batting because he felt he had not fulfilled that magnificent potential. He was actually such a gifted, almost genius all-rounder. Over to Raghu.
Yeah. So this not that Giri has been talking about my playing with Durani. We were playing a match at Khar Gymkhana, Bombay. It was not Kanga League, it was something called the Salim Shield. That's a knockout tournament. We actually won the match. So Salim Durani was playing for Khar Gymkhana. And that day I realized that this man had, he switched on and off. He was a man of moods. When he was on, his cricket was in another plane. He was not an ordinary mortal at all. When he was on, whether batting or bowling, it was amazingly different level of cricket. So he bowled well for a few overs, then seemed to have lost the mood. Then when they started batting, he came and for the first 10 or 15 minutes, he was just pottering around. Then suddenly something happened and he, in the next 3 overs, he went from 30 to 90. He scored 60 runs in the next 3 overs with batting which was simply incandescent. The Khar Gymkhana, filled up. People started running in and watching the match from the boundary line. News seemed to have got around that Salim Durani was on song. He was not just a good player, he was a great player. And as Giri said, if he had only kind of, had the kind of discipline that some of our cricketers have now, the kind of fitness and the practice and the discipline which is part of cricket in these last 2 decades, I think there would have been no stopping Salim Durani. A small story about him. Gary Sobers, the greatest all-rounder cricket has ever seen, I mean, nobody ever disputes that, was a great admirer of Salim Durani. And it is said that when Salim scored his century in West Indies in the 4th test, Sobers was sitting with him when the chairman of the Cricket Control Board, M.A. Chidambaram K, visiting the ground, and he was looking around and asking for Jaisimha. Where is Jai? Where is Jai? And I believe Sobers turned around and said, why are you asking for Jai? Why don't you ask for Salim? He's just scored the most brilliant century we've ever seen. And later, Gary Sobers is supposed to have said, I was a good cricketer, but here is a great one, and introduced Salim Durani to someone. So, to answer your question, sir, Salim Durani was somewhere up there. He was the most amazingly talented cricketer, perhaps, that we've produced.
As far as I remember, Salim was the cricketer who would hit a 6 when the crowd wanted him. 6, 6, 6. And Salim would oblige in his later years. And it
I've
also
seen that happen. I've seen that happen at Bombay at the Brabourne Stadium.
yes, at the Brabourne Stadium, right. And he's also acted in a film. Salim Durani also acted in a Hindi film. Next question to you. What are your memories with Sachin Tendulkar?
Sorry, sir. I was before Sachin Tendulkar,
Yeah.
and when I was a spectator,
Yeah.
I have only seen as a player. So no personal experiences, but both Giri and I have seen some of the most resplendent knocks of Sachin Tendulkar. Tendulkar had a special kind of a bond with Chennai. So whenever he played in Chennai, almost every time he scored a century. So we've seen 3 or 4 of his absolutely stunning knocks. And I'd like Giri to tell you about the knock against Pakistan.
Yeah. We were talking to a young mid-30s crowd just 2 days back, and we were talking of heartbreaks in cricket. So Raghu and I, they asked us, since you have been watching cricket from the 60s, can you tell us heartbreaks of those times? And we told them a couple of heartbreaks. But for all those people born in the 70s and 80s, the heartbreak for them was that 1998-99 series against Pakistan, Chennai Test, which we lost, I think, by just 12 runs. Chennai has seen 2 of the greatest ever test knocks by Indians. One was Vishwanath's 97 not out against West Indies in 1974-75, which was in a winning cause. And in 1998-99, Tendulkar played perhaps the next greatest or equally greatest knock of 130 odd against Pakistan, but in a losing cause. In fact, for a long time, people used to say, yeah, Sachin has not scored a winning 100 in the 4th innings. Everything comes with time, because finally, I think around 2008, just after the 26/11 tragedy at Bombay, terrorist attack, India did play England in Chennai. And Sachin hit a century to win the test match for India in the 4th innings and dedicated that century to the victims of that terrorist attack in Bombay. I had the fortune to see shorter innings by Tendulkar. But the interesting thing is, when he first came on the scene as a 16-year-old, I remember some of us saying that he holds the bat very low down in the grip, near the neck of the bat. Normally, people hold the bat. In those days, we grew up thinking you don't hold the bat like an axe, holding it very close to the neck of the bat, the shoulder of the bat, both fists together there. How will he play the top hand? Will he not be a bottom-handed player and all that? I think all that went out of the window, because you saw Sachin with his own unique grip low on the bat, play with the straightest of left elbows and the best of technique, and credit to his coach who let him play like that. Apparently, I don't know how correct the story is, Raghu, but apparently he began playing with his elder brother's bat, which was slightly bigger for a small boy, and he had to compensate for a bigger bat by holding it closer to the shoulder of the bat. And that's how he developed and built it and kept that grip on. Till the end, Sachin had the same grip. Sachin played forward, back, and everywhere with the purest of techniques and the finest of blades. Whether it was the on drive, the off drive, the cover drive, the flick, the pull, which he later on did not play so much. The pull was magnificent. And the cut. In fact, just to conclude this piece about Tendulkar's completeness as a batsman, we have a complete chapter on Tendulkar. So I'm not going into that chapter. I want to say something else. You see, in modern cricket, the forward press by a batsman is very pronounced, with the result that on bouncing wickets and to shorter balls, they're not able to quickly go back and play the horizontal cut shot. It's true of many of India's best batsmen of the modern generation also. With Sachin, it was different. Sachin played forward and back, could square drive with a straight blade, vertical blade, and also play the horizontal cut shot, and later on, of course, even the ramp shot. So he's a complete batsman, God's gift to India, and what a glorious career he had. And we hate comparison, so we don't want to say who, what, and all that. Just think that India was blessed to have all four great batsmen playing together for India at that time. Dravid, Laxman, Ganguly, Tendulkar, all together at the same time.
No,
And
you are
Tendulkar,
forgetting Sehwag.
Sehwag, Fab Five, correction. Fab Five with Sehwag at the top. I and Raghu always say it's Fab Five, not Fab Four. So we were very lucky to have the Fab Five together, and Sachin Tendulkar, the jewel among in the crowd.
So can you tell us? I read a book. I read the chapter on Dhoni. Can you say about the day Dhoni resigned? Everybody love to hear that.
Giri, yours.
Yeah. So, see, Dhoni did everything with style and surprise, I think. So he resigned his captaincy right in the middle of a tour in Australia and, in fact, quit Test cricket. I think he quit one-day captaincy also quite the same way, and so therefore there was no fanfare. That's the kind of man he is. To which we always say it's because Dhoni has the ability to treat success and failure as imposters, and he keeps both success and failure at arm's length from him. As a one-day captain, unmatched for the way he could get the spinners to do their best under him in one-day cricket, unmatched. For a new style of glove work and stumping, unmatched. Because when Dhoni came on, he was not a great keeper, but he kept developing, and towards the end, his were the fastest hands to stump off a spinner. Normally, and Raghu, by the way, apart from batting and his occasional spin, used to keep wickets also when required. And he will tell you that, we are taught to give with the gloves or with the hands as you take a ball. So your hand withdraws a bit so that you cushion the ball and bring it back to the stumps. Dhoni never caught the ball behind the stumps and pulled back. He caught the ball and jammed the wicket, if you remember. That's memorable. And the emotions he evoked in the country when he resigned were unprecedented. Among the two of us, Raghu and me, I'm the one who has met Dhoni, and that too once, and that too for just 45 minutes or an hour. But it became a chapter in our book, Rohit Bhai. And it's for readers to read, because they'll get a flavor of Dhoni, the person, from that 1 hour of conversation and interaction with Dhoni. He was just so honest, and what you see is what you get, Dhoni. And it resonated with us because both I and Raghu are also the same. So I think readers may enjoy the box item on, or the small piece we have written on An Evening with Dhoni.
I am a left-hander myself. I used to play left-hand cricket, and I admire Neil Harvey. You have written a chapter on Neil Harvey. Can you say something about Neil Harvey? Many would not be remembering here in the club.
See, as I told you, I was born in 1946, and my mother got me interested in cricket in 1952 at the age of 6. So as soon as I got interested in cricket and started following cricket, I realized that the world after Bradman had a resplendent left-hander who was almost the best batsman in the world. In 1949 and 1951, Neil Harvey had scored 4 centuries in 5 tests, twice against South Africa, once in Australia, once in South Africa. And some of those innings were unbelievably amazing. And so, as soon as I started following cricket and then started playing cricket seriously and reading about cricket, Neil Harvey was the hero. And he was such a stylish left-hander, and his footwork was, it had to be seen to be believed. We had a leg spinner then from Bombay called Subhash Gupte. Yeah. Subhash Gupte was considered by the 3 Ws, Warren, Weeks and Walcott, as the greatest spinner they had ever seen. So Subhash Gupte had everyone in difficulties because his flight, his spin, his googly, everything was absolutely top class. So hardly any other batsman faced him with confidence. Most people just survived an over from Gupte and tried to play, more attacking cricket against the other bowler. Neil Harvey was the only one who danced down the wicket to Gutte and drove him. In both the 1956 and 60 tests in India, Harvey scored a century in Bombay. In 60, he also scored a century in Delhi. Harvey was played later, the latter half of his career. He scored when everybody else failed on wickets or against bowling, which were very difficult. So when they played on a matting wicket in Pakistan, none of them had played on a matting wicket before. Fazal Mahmood was almost unplayable. And in that match, when the whole side scored about 170 runs and only one other batsman reached double figures, Harvey was 96. So that's the kind of cricket that Harvey played. And he was also a brilliant fielder and he looked very handsome. So at the age of 10, when I started seeing cricket, to me, he was the absolute hero. And I never lost that hero worship of Harvey all the way. He's the only surviving member of the 1948 Dragman's team. Harvey is aged about 93 now.
Thank you, Raghu. Any questions from the members?
No questions, but I would want to thank Raghuji and I'm sorry, the Giridharji for such nostalgia, beautiful nostalgia that you've triggered about this game. And in the same breath, why are we not able to recreate the same magic? I mean, I honestly hate T20, T25 formats, and I think it's become very, very highly commoditized. So that's where. So thank you as well as a question.
I'll take that first, and Raghu can build on. May I know your name, sir? Sorry.
Amit Nagpal.
Okay, Mr. Nagpal, I will answer that. Actually, if you notice in the last 10 years, Test cricket has become very interesting. 90% of tests are decisive. 90% of tests are finishing in 4 days. People who used to score at 2.5 runs and over earlier, nowadays in Test cricket are scoring 3.5 runs and over, and people are scoring 300, 350 on the first day of a Test match. All this is because of a nice influence, positive influence of white ball cricket. So I think a lot of people will and begin to enjoy Test cricket. I also think WTC, the Test Championship, is a very nice development. It's my personal belief that when you have these 8 tests, play not merely bilateral test series, but something that is going to lead to that cup at the end for World Test Championship, there is a salience that is built into Test cricket. The only thing is that the crowds somehow come more for one day and white ball cricket. But it is not so in Australia and England. If you notice, if it's Ashes, the crowds pack it in. Even in South Africa, when we go to play now in a few months, you will notice that I think we are playing a Boxing Day test, 26th December onwards. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
yeah,
you'll find the crowds.
It's a big day.
Correct. You will find the crowds packed. I'm reasonably confident that when you play a test match at Chennai, for example, you'll find it packed. So I think that the calendars are getting very packed, and therefore people are prioritizing. If people could ensure that the World Cup one-day cricket, whether it's T20 or 50 overs, is maintained, Test cricket is maintained with a WTC, but this meaningless 3 matches, 4 matches, T20 bilateral series is removed.
Yeah.
I think we'll have a good mix of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And also with India being the main revenue spinner for it, we have a lot of responsibility also on how this game's schedules are made and who plays.
You went on mute accidentally. Yeah.
Can you hear me? I'm reasonably confident. Good times ahead.
Thank you.
A lot of innovative cricket also. Yes, optimism, of course. See, we don't want to be nostalgic. We are looking at good things that happened at that time, but we also enjoyed. So, for example, I and Raghu were in Chennai in the pavilion stands at Chepauk to watch India-Australia play that first World Cup ODI match on 8th October. So we have begun enjoying our white ball cricket thoroughly. and studying it. And in fact, even in the book, we have tipped our hat to all the positive influences of white ball cricket on overall game.
Super. I look forward to reading your books. I've already requested Rohit ji in a private chat to send me a few author copies. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else has got a question? I would like to put a question that cricket has got big money spinning game, and we often hear about match fixing, etc. So, and in between there was a very large number of match fixing which were coming to light also, and now it has a little bit subdued. So do you have any your views on match fixing, etc., which is corrupting the game?
Again, Giri will be the better person to answer this.
I'll just say a few. See, for all of us who grew up watching the game as an amateur sport, the commercialization when it came was great for the game and the cricketers, but brought with it certain other things also. And the 90s was the time when I think all cricket lovers of our generation turned off from the game. At least I and Raghu, at least for some years in the 90s, were cheesed off and switched off because of all the match fixing scandals. I think it was very nice that when Ganguly took over the team and elsewhere also, we had the Hansi Cronje incident and things like that. Hopefully, from 2001, we thought the game is back. And at least the Indian cricketers formed a formidable, upright phalanx, people of upright character, bringing repute back to the game, making us feel good about the game. So I think that was good. What disturbed us, however, was again during the IPL around 2013, etc., when that spurt of match fixing happened. For that reason alone, when IPL happens, unfortunately, we still call it tamasha. Although, because we are cricket lovers, we do watch it just for the sheer thrill of watching bat and ball. But otherwise, there's always that feeling that it's become very crass. However, I think there are a lot better checks and balances now. Vigilance is the only way it has to be. So vigilance is one. But the other thing is, I think all the supporting staff, management, mentors, they must educate the cricketers constantly. People coming from small and remote places at the tender ages of 18 and 19, when they come in contact with big money and high life, it is very natural that their head spins. And I think it is not their fault, it is the fault of society. And when I say society, I mean all the support structures that will help these cricketers be upright, honest, respect the game. Because, if you play the game well, everything else will follow. If you chase everything else, even cricket will give you up. So somewhere along the way, people like Dravid or Lakshman and others who are coaching those youngsters, Dravid used to be the under-19 coach, India A coach, Lakshman does that, other people will do that. At the tender formative ages of 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, if around that time we instill good values and mentor them and tell them how they must respect the game and the game will pay them back, things will become better. Vigilance, constant vigilance, good governance plus good mentorship. It's easier said than done, but this is what it is. And as I told the gentleman, optimism is always good to have in trying times.
Thank you, Giri.
But do you think match fixing is still possible?
Some of the things that are alleged are a little, far-fetched. Fixing, some kind of betting / fixing is possible in cricket. I mean, you can pay somebody money, a bowler, to say third ball of that second over, please bowl a no ball or a wild. That is easy to do. But otherwise, fixing a match is nowadays, I think, going to be very difficult.
Yeah, so because it would require a team effort, full team.
Yes, exactly. You can't really say, I bowl outside the off stump. When he cuts, you drop that catch at gully. No. Things are not so easy in cricket. It does not follow that kind of a pattern. So some of those things are a little far-fetched. It's unlikely to happen. But somebody bowling a wide, somebody bowling a no ball, etc., to win a bet, all those things are possible. Or somebody, dropping a catch, perhaps is possible, but we don't know who's going to get a catch. So how do you drive a player?
Okay, we come to the end of this discussion, and I would request Sanjay Merchant to propose.
Can I make one? Sorry, sir.
Yeah,
can
sure.
I make?
Sure.
I'll be failing in my duty if I did not, first of all, thank you and Rohit who hosted the questions. I wanted to mention to all those people who are listening and who will subsequently listen to the recording that Pune's Express Book Service has copies of our book, and they will be happy to dispatch those. If you're in Pune, easy, but they are also willing to dispatch it anywhere in the country. So anyone who, after listening to this broadcast, wants to get a copy can reach out to Express Book Service. And I'll be failing in my duty if I didn't mention that. Back to you, sir.
Thank you. So I will straightway go to Sanjay Merchant to propose a vote of thanks.
Yeah, Umesh, thank you. Raghunath ji and Giridhar, it was great having you here and hearing about everything you said. In fact, you all were talking of test match cricket and we gave you the time of a T20 instead of a test match cricket. So but we hope that we can call you once for a test match so that we can hear more of you then. And we will certainly read your book and go ahead with it. Thanks for coming to the club. And on behalf of Rotary Club of Pune Riverside, thank you very much.